Chapter 8. Monica moved slowly back in the snow. She peered inside the many small shop windows with their curved, bowed frame shape. Some window panes had circular brown glass shapes in the middle of their panes. Candles burned brightly as she saw customers purchasing scents and soaps from one shop, and, in another, a shop assistant was weighing out boiled sweets and soft candy from a scoop. There were rows and rows of packed sweet jars to choose from. Feeling the icy wind cut into her, she stopped to check that her snowshoes were on properly and that her now spare walking stick was properly lashed to the trolley cart. The cobbled streets were not always kept in good repair, so it was easy enough to sprain an ankle when walking about in the dark, never mind in snowy conditions when fallen carpets of powder snow could cover up nasty potholes in the deeply rutted streets and back alleyways. Outside a large tavern called the Huntsman's Horn, shire horses kicked at the ground from a brewery cart, their blinkered eyes shielding them from the driving snow. Nose bags with treats of molasses and some dry feed kept them happy after their long journey from the brewery to the public house. Heavy barrels of beer, all destined for the next day's beer festival, were being unloaded from their cart, down the ramps, and then placed against the end of the cart in a careful manner so as not to burst their precious contents. "Steady now, back a bit. Mind your back. Now help me with this one," she heard the brewery delivery driver shout to two young men with stocky arms and bull necks. The men were using long poles to control the beer barrel movements. Sometimes they had to throw their full strength and weight into holding a moving barrel or changing its direction in mid-roll with poles as required. Both of the young men turned to stare at her as she hobbled past. "Who did that to you, missy? We'll sort them out if you want. It'll only cost you a kiss and a cuddle, missy," the young man with blonde hair and a bushy moustache to match shouted out cheekily. Monica smiled weakly at them. They didn't seem a bad sort. Wincing with every step, leaning heavily on her walking stick and using the trolley as a prop as well, she waved at the brewery delivery men and blew them a kiss. Finally, after facing into the snow-laden winds for another 20 minutes, Monica made it back to Bruno. "There you are. What in heaven's name happened to you, my little toadstool? I've been worried sick about you." Monica felt like bursting into tears. She took a deep breath, realising that to break down now was just a sign of weakness that her brave father just didn't need in these difficult times. Instead, she gently unloaded the trolley of its precious contents of the repaired accordion and her extra walking stick. Monica handed the chitty to her father, plus the stamped paid bill. "All done and paid for. I had such an adventure sorting it out," she said, giving Bruno a brief update of events. Bruno took one look at her nasty wounds and said, "You're going to the barber surgeon. He'll put stitches in that head wound, and I'm not having you object to him taking a look at that horrible knee injury. I'm going to ask Matthias to keep an eye on our stall, so just wait a moment, Monica. I have just enough to pay for the surgeon, so I'm not taking no for an answer," said Bruno. I have just enough to pay the surgeon, so I'm not taking no for an answer," said Bruno. Monica and Bruno found the barber surgeon. He was just about to shut his daytime business barber shop when they rushed in. "Great to see you, Dieter. I need a quick stitching job on my daughter here. She's taken a tumble." Dieter Pohl, the barber-cum-surgeon, took a close look at the nasty oozing gash above Monica's eye. "I'll have to put a couple of stitches in that head wound. Your knee is also badly bruised, and it's swollen. I'll give you some more witch hazel, plus you need copious ice patch for the bruising. Sit down, Monica, and we'll start work straight away." Monica winced in pain as her nasty cut was first scrubbed and debrided with carbolic phenolic medicines. Once Dieter was satisfied that the cut had been cleaned out, he began the process of stitching it up. He used fine gut stitches, but warned Monica that she would be left with an ugly scar. "However, you won't die of septicemia, so take that into account." Her heavily contused and swollen knee was checked for serious damage. The barber surgeon gave the knee wound a deep clean with more antiseptic to minimise infection. He put fresh bandages on the knee. Finally, a hot cup of ground black coffee was just the type Monica needed to revive her flagging spirits. Bruno paid the busy barber surgeon. "I only trust you, Dieter. I'll always remember how you took a bullet out of my uncle's leg when poachers shot at him for chasing them off our land. It saved his leg and his life because the bullet was deep." "Pleased to be of service to the Veltimes again in your hour of need. Can't say it's been a pleasure due to circumstances, but I do wish young Monica here a speedy recovery. You must mobilise that injured knee as much as possible. Keep the stitches clean and ask a nurse to take them out once the wound is knitted properly. Here's some more antiseptic to keep the wound clean. Do not mess with it yourselves. There's only infection and death for those who meddle with wounds. Bruno helped his daughter back up on her feet. They went outside in the swirling snow, hurrying back to their stall to relieve Matthias. Bruno addressed his daughter as they continued to pack away the day's unsold items. While you've been busy diving under coaches and horses and putting deposits on trolleys, I've been busy making plans for our store. I think we should look into opening up a shop somewhere, Monika. I'm tired of having to hulk stuff down here on sleds and wagons every month. So much time is spent transporting stock to and fro. You and Sophia have taken on new staff for the workshop. Our capacity for handcrafted goods is increasing. I'm fed up of being bullied by the market management lot on my stall. I do not for 1 minute trust them, especially with this new tourist idea of tokens and entertainment. It all sounds like they've already made up their minds without consulting people like me anyway. Generations of Veltans have been successfully running stalls on Braunstadt Market. No one talked to my father, or indeed my grandfather, in the way that I'm now being addressed. We are now being treated like rank outsiders. They watch us like hawks and speak to us as if we were imbeciles. They watch us like hawks and speak to us as if we are imbeciles. All mutual respect which used to exist between us has now slowly evaporated like puddles in the sun. What more could they do to convince us to leave? I ask you, Monika. Just be careful, Father. I totally agree with you about all you say, but perhaps we should find out why they are treating us like this. To me, it sounds like the railway companies have got retail plans of their own. If anyone objects, they can always build new shopping facilities somewhere else along the railway lines to cater for their ticket-paying customers. If they do that, then people won't even come to these villages anymore. If we opt out of the tourists with tokens idea, we may miss the affluent crowds of customers coming up here from the city on the train. Perhaps that's exactly what they want us to do. In other words, they do not like the fact that we can adapt to change. I'm beginning to believe that the market authorities would dearly like to replace us with other people whom they have in mind to do the job. My fear is that if we leave our stall, they will give everyone else a massive treat like cheaper rent and bigger stalls, and then relocate everyone, plus supply them with increased custom from the railway tourism to rub salt into our wounds. We could rent out a shop only to find the trade is dead, since no crowds of visitors could be bothered to even walk past our door. Also, Father, did you ever consider that the management here at the market may themselves have been manipulated as much as we have? My guess is that the railway company is conducting a giant gamble. If they can't find a means of offsetting their high costs to build the tracks and run the system, then they will fold as well. Investing in us must surely be cheaper than building a new shopping centre. The market management here are not the brightest buttons in the old jam jar, but they know a customer when they see one. If trade goes up, so does their revenue, because they'll get more stallholders or charge more rent. Time may come when they will get plush new offices to match their higher status. As Monika poured out her thoughts about the market, she hobbled along as the last market items from the store were loaded onto carts to be dragged back to the sled in the stables where the resting ponies and faithful Ausstepp the dog waited. All we have left, Father, is our Alpine image, she continued. We're as close as these tourists will get to an Alpine farming family. People who travel up here should be able to buy goods made here. Already I do believe that some people are buying from us merely to copy our stock ideas. The creepy thing is that we're stuck in the middle of a big battle now. We rescued a man on the Alps yesterday. He turns out to be public enemy number one with the elves. We have to return his satchel to the elves, or else. Or else what, Father? We're always being importuned by others. It's about time that something went our way. I mean, shouldn't we still enjoy life like we used to? I vote we pack up and head back to the Edelweiss in Toot Suite. We can try and get hold of the satchel, but at the end of the day, we didn't take the elves' property and put it in the satchel. We didn't poke about in their business, so I'm damned if they should threaten us just like this lot are. They're trying to pick fights with us on the market for the sake of petty jealousies. The elves seem to have ideas about the market themselves. It looks to me as if they are as frustrated as we are about the sales. Well spoken, Monika, well spoken. Now all we need is some way of paying our way out of trouble. Unless folks start seriously spending money on our goods, then we're doomed. I can't hide that from you anymore. No, Father, and I don't want you to hide it from me anymore. I know we don't have a choice now. We have to fight to keep our trade going. The only thing which is certain is that if we don't fight, we'll lose everything. I can't let that happen. In an effort to cut costs, father and daughter left the village as soon as their sled was packed. They fed the dog and patted him. The horses were rested enough, and, after another feed and more drink, they were ready to begin the long journey back. An owl hooted loudly from the woods as they made their way back along the forest road, passing the neatly ploughed fields around the village. In the distance, they could hear laughter as revellers started to arrive for the beer festival starting at sunrise. People never miss the chance to enjoy a festival around here. Itinerant travellers such as festival goers were the mainstay of trade for farming families like the Veltimes. Tonight, the wind whipped up among the tall trees, swaying the branches and dislodging more snow. Again, the Veltimes followed the deeply furrowed tracks of other travellers on the forest road. Away in the distance they heard a steam train whistle. The sound of steel being hammered by a sledgehammer carried on the distant wind. It was known that the railway companies worked 24-hour shifts, so the hammering sounds of metal on metal were almost certainly the night shift extending the track ever deeper into the valleys. How long the rest of this remote region could hold out for was now the talk of the village. Already there were families who had sold up to the railway company in terms of their lowland farms and facilities. Such families were moving to the New World. Some would chase gold in the Americas or Canada, or even in Australia and New Zealand. Others tried to return to farming in places like New Zealand and New South Wales, where they could start again in a new wilderness. Some turned to growing the grape in new vineyards in the New World. Everywhere you looked there was change afoot. Nothing stayed the same as machine and man tore up the forests and conquered hill and valley. Where mountains blocked their way, high explosives in the form of nitroglycerin came in and blasted tunnels out of sheer rock. New roads snaked their way up steep slopes. A railway could even climb a steep hill now, thanks to the use of pulleys and mechanisms. A brief pause in the hammering sound enabled an owl's hoot to be heard. High winds continued to assault the mountainside as the Veltimes climbed higher up the snaking road. Suddenly there were gaps in the snow clouds. As they turned a corner in a small clearing, the first view of the moon came that night. Riding high in the winter sky was a waning gibbous moon. So fast were the scudding clouds that the moon itself appeared to be racing across the Alpine sky. For another 2 hours the road climbed, then reached a plateau fault line. Here, next to a babbling brook, they stopped to allow the horses to drink. They gave Alfstedt a well-earned drink and a rest as well. Bruno got out the spirit burner and began to boil up a hot brew of herbal coffee to be taken with dried biscuits and fruit cake. He took a nip of schnapps and had a bottle of wheat beer to ward off the excess chill. Monika was likewise grateful of both schnapps and wheat beer to ward off the cold and numb. Her knee pain. What were we going to do about the man we rescued? She asked her father in a rather nonplussed manner. Ah, yes, the proverbial Good Samaritan act which landed us in boiling hot water, he joked, as a pan of water he had taken from the Alpine stream began to boil. I can't see how the injured man could be well enough to leave the Edelweiss Inn just yet. If we're very lucky, we might just get there before his cronies do. That gives us a chance to get hold of the loaded satchel. We could always try the old swap the satchel trick, you know, as practised by those in the know. We just have to find a satchel suitable for it, said Bruno with some light-hearted sarcasm. How about if we stage a robbery by getting to Saul first, and then bursting into the man's room in disguise, said Monika. There's always trouble with staging such a prank, Monika. You know how we helped a dying stranger, not knowing anything about him, as we found him lying in the snow? Well, the problem with playing games like staging a robbery on the satchel is that other guests are bound to intervene at some stage and raise the alarm. Possession is 9/10 of the law, I'm afraid. Our best bet is to play officialdom itself. In order to do that, we have to come up with a suitable official reason to confiscate his satchel, which placates the other guests. The only thing I can think of is that we have to say that it is stolen property according to another traveller, and to up the ante on the injured man. The other guests are going to say, according to whom? We'll have to get to Saul to take the satchel from the man and put it in safekeeping until the authorities arrive to verify our claim. Then we have to get to the safekeeping place to take it, said Bruno. I'm not convinced that any of your ideas will work, Father. Our best chance, I feel, is to try to get to the satchel, then simply take it straight away. We have to somehow get to the man, disable his senses, or distract him long enough so that the satchel can be extracted from him. The only way to do that is to tell Saul to let the injured man know that someone wants to see him, and then get him away from the satchel. Once the man's distracted, we then go for the satchel. My best idea is to go for a medical angle. We arrive around the back, all changed, and call for Saul. The loop, so to speak. One of us says to anyone who may ask who we are that we've got something to do with the man's treatment. We take the satchel boldly, telling the other guests that it is needed to verify the man's identity. People know who we are, so it's best to be somewhat truthful. We only need to have the satchel for a brief time. Then the elves will have to snatch it from us. Voila! Satchel liberated with full contents returned back to rightful owners. Better get our medical act together then, Monica. I've got a white coat and you've got an apron. Plus we've got masks, which we use for filing metal goods and for dust filtering in any hay barns. We've got masks, which we use for filing metal goods and for dust filtering in hay barns and such like. So we might as well go for a medical, since that way we get to the man quickly. How are we going to deal with the aftermath of the man's satchel going? Because my vote is we leave straight away. We're going to have to get the satchel to the elves somehow. My big worry is Saul. He may not survive the repercussions of taking the man's satchel because he's bound to be blamed for the absence. We don't think the hotel management will take the rap for that, do you? Replied Monica. You don't think the hotel management would take the rap for that, do you? Replied Monica. In that case, we take Saul with us. We can always say that he was duped by us. However, I do agree that it places his life in great danger. Depends whose wrong side you prefer being on, really, doesn't it? Said Bruno, as he finished biting into a chocolate cookie, gulping down his last sip of strong hot coffee as Monica sipped at her tea. There was only just enough time to get the medical equipment and suitable clothing in one place, otherwise the window of opportunity for grabbing the satchel will be gone. I vote we change all our plans and instead go for a snatch when the man is asleep. Have the original satchel in place but replace the contents. It's entirely feasible that the man has not had time to fully check the veracity of the satchel contents yet. Our only chance is to go for sleeping time. Anything else is too dangerous. To be quite honest, I'm not good at doing a fake medical act and someone will be bound to trace us. If the exchange happens during sleep time, it's much harder to link us because a place can be claimed to be full of suspects. The onus is then on them to prove it either way, which gives us a fighting chance. If we have to go to the man's room while he's asleep, then that is surely a job for Saul in case the man wakes up. But that's not to say that we can't be under a window where he can drop the satchel, said Bruno. By the time the Veltimes had got back on the road, it was past 11 p.m. At this time, the sound of wolves howling was more persistent. Every wolf cry brought a shudder to Monica. She found herself pulling her shawl and blankets ever tighter around her wounded body. After some brief consideration, Bruno made up his mind to go for the sleeping man plan. It would have to involve Saul, but it also meant that it was better if not everyone in the inn knew of the Veltime presence. Luckily, those who had known about the Veltimes only knew that they'd rescued the man from a certain death, and that in everyone's eyes they were lifesavers. The man himself had, according to the elves, taken their property, so the best outcome was to allow him to settle it with the elves, and if that meant the man having to be punished for it, then he should be glad to be still alive, because it was certainly not intentional from the elf's point of view that he was still living and breathing today, thought Bruno. Bruno glanced at his fob watch. They were making good progress, so he kept the pace steady. Another 5 miles passed, and then it would only be a few more, and they would be at the inn before daybreak in order to hatch their plan with Saul. The Veltimes turned round the next bend, only to be faced by a sudden roadblock. A set of logs had been crudely placed across their path. Standing along them, patently reinforcing the roadblock, were 8 Inglebert elves. "Ah, there you are. Thought you'd be back tonight. You know, we had a bet amongst ourselves, and I've just won. I said to the others, I bet the Veltimes will carry on as if nothing happened the other day. They'll ignore the satchel deal. They'll just pretend it never happened. Put it down to magic mushrooms or something. They'll do the market stall thing down in Braunstadt like they always did, and then bolt back to their Alpine pastures with a hot fondue dish and jugs of fine ales waiting for them back in their cosy chalet, all in front of a roaring log fire, just as if we'd never met. Mark my words, I said. I put my money where my mouth was. Now it seems that I'm the recipient of a nice payout. It'll buy me a half-barrel of winter brew strong ale, said a stout elf holding a flamed pitch torch. The figures of the other 7 elves came into sight around him as the flames illuminated the night. Sporting crossbows, catapults and axes, the group of elves comfortably blocked the Veltime's passage. A real easy agreement, wasn't it? You get the satchel, and in return, we will deal with the nasty man who took our stuff. All you have to do is get us that satchel. You must have known that the satchel was important when you found the thief. He was very reluctant to let go of it, even when we fractured his leg for his troubles, said an elf with a catapult tucked inside his back pocket. Now, if we can elaborate a little, we'll now accompany you as far as the Edelweiss Inn. We will wait outside. You will go in and fetch the satchel. It's as simple as that. You go inside, we will wait. Let's say 10 minutes for you to come out with the satchel all intact. Mind you, the bulging pockets and contents all in place, said the elf sporting the flaming torch. There's no choice for you in this matter, said another of the elves. We do not accept fake satchels or empty satchel, although it has to be said we rather like the new range of goods you're selling on the market stall these days. It would look even better if you did a special elves range of matching accessories for us. We do not mean to be rude, but you're going to have to get a move on now. We will ride behind you, remaining out of sight so as to keep on sledging like nothing has happened, and we'll follow in your tracks. You'll be safe and sound with us around. No fear. No worries, cracked another elf. Alfstedt, the Valtime's dog, snarled at an elf who tried to poke about under the tarpaulin on the sledge. Get away from their sledge, the leader elf with his flaming torch shouted at his companion, who was meddling with the Valtime stock.